What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Rat's Den. Today I wanted to go over the installation of Yuzu. I feel like I ran into a bit of a kind of confusion when installing things, but then after going through Google, looking at YouTube, Yuzu's guides, I just wanted to at least kind of clarify a few things, and then I also kind of wanted to test Tears of the Kingdom on my current build. I'm anticipating it'll be pretty good on my current system, but using kind of an older graphics card, the RX 580, I really wanted to see how Tears of the Kingdom handles and see if it still performs better than the Nintendo Switch itself. So with that said, let's go over the installation of Yuzu because I found that to be a little bit baffling. So I have my Yuzu folder here that I've already downloaded. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and launch Yuzu. Okay, so we've opened Yuzu for the first time, and it's giving us this error message. At this point in time, you can quickly see, you can either go to the quick start guide online and kind of review all the information. But if you've gathered your keys, your firmware, and your games, then you've come to the right place, at least so far, and we can kind of get started on that specific set of installation. So let's just go ahead and clear these error messages here, okay? So what we'll want to do is now we need to navigate and install our firmware first and foremost. So let's go ahead and click on File here. Open the Yuzu folder. Now it's not obvious here, but we're going to want to navigate to NAND, System, Contents, Register. This folder is where you're going to store your firmware information. You're going to need to take all of the contents within the zip file itself, select them, and drag them over to the registered folder. At this point in time, we're pretty much done with the firmware portion. But let's navigate back to grab our prod keys. So what we can do here is navigate back to the Yuzu folder, or if you're in Yuzu, use the same file, open Yuzu folder. All right, and when we have that, we're going to navigate to the keys folder. Now this one's a little bit more self-explanatory, and we can simply copy and paste over our keys into this folder itself. With that, go ahead and close anything that's unnecessary. I'm going to go ahead and close Yuzu and retest it and make sure that I'm not getting that error. And lo and behold, I'm not getting that error anymore. So at this point in time, I can add my games. All right. So it's a little obvious. If you read on the screen, you just double click to add a new folder or game. I'm going to go ahead and add the folder to this. All right. So I've selected it, and I'm going to go ahead and select folder. And there you go. And now it added Tears of the Kingdom to this. I don't believe we're quite done yet. I believe we do need to update. But the way to do this, it's not really obvious, but you're going to want to click on the game, then hit File, Install Files to NAND. Then go ahead and navigate to that same folder and click on your NSP file. Select it and open it, and it should go ahead and do everything that it needs to do. Installing an update, or DLC, will overwrite the previously installed one. We're okay with that. Let's go ahead and install it. Right, and there we go. So now it's updated according to whatever file that you have. Now at this point in time, we can actually click on Zelda and it'll run the shader process. And what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and get through with that first, and then I'll kind of show you how it performs. Now as you can see, Tears of the Kingdom is loaded, and I do want to go ahead and show you the statistics on screen while we're navigating. And you can see that it's at 30 FPS. Now, again, if you're satisfied with the 30 frames per second experience, you can go ahead and stop right here and I believe play the entire game as needed. For me, on the other hand, though, there are a few things that I'd like to note. I like to play in 60 frames, and there are things that are kind of in the way when you play in 60 frames. But let me show you what I mean going forward in the next clip. Okay, so now that we've gotten past the intro portion of game, I can now kind of go over a few things that I think are critical about playing Tears of the Kingdom on PC. Now, for one, again, if you're going to just play the 30 frames per second version of this game, you're pretty much all set. But if you want to get a little bit more enhanced, I'm going to go over the graphical settings within Yuzu itself, along with attaching mods to Yuzu so that it performs at 60 frames per second, and also tackle an issue that's presented in the game itself when you introduce mods to it. And let's talk about that right now. So, to me, the biggest part of this game is to maintain your immersion in it. And what I mean is that Nintendo has done a great job of implementing this in Zelda itself because of the way that you have to choose your items throughout the game. So, let me give you an example. In the top left corner, you can see that I have the D-pad and what it does on selection, right? So right means go to my weapon stash. Now, if you hold right on the D-pad, it brings up this menu here. If you let go, it takes the menu away. Now, throughout the game, you're going to constantly access this menu, whether or not it's going to be, attaching items to other items or selecting other throwables or something of that nature. You're going to be using this system, and you don't necessarily break the immersion of what you're doing. You can continuously see the game in the background, right? However, once you introduce mods, this immersion is broken. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is see if I can configure the game according to the settings within Yuzu, and see what we have going on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to hit Emulation and Configure. So general, I think I'm going to leave this as stock. I left this set as well, the limit speed percent, and I didn't change that. The UI and things of that nature, the UI and hotkeys, I also left that alone as well. CPU, the accuracy, I just left that on auto. And finally, the graphics portion. This part here is probably the most important, and you'll be able to fine tune according to your build. This game, from what I've seen, can get up to past 6 gigabytes of VRAM, which was very surprising once I configured all of the settings. I really didn't expect the emulation to get past that, but I believe the mods aid in the use of more VRAM. So with that said, I recommend at least 8 gigabytes of VRAM to start. Luckily, the RX 580 that I have does have 8 gigabytes of VRAM. Okay, so this asynchronous GPU emulation, I leave that checked. I leave this checked, this accelerate ASTC decoding, I leave that checked as well. I leave all of these checked. If your computer doesn't set it, make sure you do set it to Vulkan. Vulkan, for some reason, has just the best effect on a lot of emulation type things. So go ahead and use the Vulkan backend. Let's see what we have here. I've seen some other recommended modes. I tend to leave VSync on because I don't like the screen tearing in anything that I use for whatever. I don't. There's a specific screen tear that happens when you don't use VSync, and it's my preference to leave VSync on. The emulation, I basically leave it on default. I do leave it at borderless window. The aspect ratio, I just leave it as it is. Resolution, I leave it as it is. The Windows adapting filter. Now here's where I do change things. I select FSR, and then I basically turn up the sharpness all the way. The anti-aliasing method, I've actually seen a few things back and forth, like FXAA might be better, SMAA might be better. I'm going to go ahead and select SMAA because there was one comment I saw on the forums that said SMAA probably has a better effect on overall performance. With that said, we're done with the general graphic settings. Go ahead and navigate to the Advanced tab. So here, I actually like to push and see how much I can get out from Yuzu with my graphics card. So I go ahead and set it all the way to extreme, and I leave it on the best quality. Anywhere where it does say Vulkan, I go ahead and check it because I'm using the Vulkan setting anyways. So I go ahead and check that. I'm going to go ahead and enforce the maximum clocks here. Decode ATSC textures asynchronously. It's a hack. It may reduce load time stutter. And I'm all about reducing the stutters and how much time it will do. So I go ahead and check this myself as well. I leave everything else that was checked also checked. And this last thing right here, this asynchronous shader building, it's also a hack, not necessarily set for this, but it says that it may reduce stutters when using in your shaders as well. So shader stutter. So I go ahead and check this as well. The filtering level here, again, I like to try it at its most extreme level to see where we stand. Highest possible settings using my card that I have. Your mileage may vary. The last thing that we'll take a look here is controls. Now, again, it's really based solely on your type of setup. I don't know what happened, but it says Xbox 360 controller, and it was the only option that I was able to select. So I went ahead and selected that, and it actually automatically mapped everything for me. Again, your mileage may vary. Specifically on Ryujinx, I had to actually map the controls manually myself. So go ahead and test it to see what's going on. And we're pretty much done with these settings here. Go ahead and hit OK. So at this point in time, the graphics, they should be a little bit more updated, but we're not done yet. I want to talk about the mods section here. I like to play in 60 frames per second, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and introduce the 60 FPS first and foremost to give you the example of what I mean when it comes to breaking the immersion in Zelda. So what you'll do is simply right-click on the game itself, then go to Open Mod Data Location, and that will bring in the mod folder specifically for this game. The only thing that I will link for you is the link to the mods on GitHub. You know, I did my research, or I watched a lot of videos and some guides, and I found this to be probably the best in association with Tears of the Kingdom when using Yuzu. So I found this site. I'll go ahead and leave it in the description below. Please use this, and you'll be able to use the same mods that I'm using here today. You'll have something that looks very similar to this. You'll want to open up the zip file itself here, and open up the folder that's under it, and obviously go to the mods section. Luckily, the Holographic Wings has supplied us with a very organized set of mods, and you can just go in and kind of pick and choose as you need. So what I'm going to do first and foremost is to get it to run in 60 frames per second. There are a couple of options. Again, I would highly recommend you reading it on the forum here on the Holographic Wings GitHub page. He does give a good explanation of what these mods do. Now, but this is an actually very, very excellent webpage to look over, get a sense of what the mods might do. But let's just get started with 60 frames per second. I'm going to go ahead and use this static one. At this point in time, you want to go ahead and check to see if it actually is pulling from that folder. You simply just right click again on the file and go to properties. And then you can see that it's already enabled. We do have the 60 frames per second static mod. Let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. Okay. Okay, so you can see here, again, it's going, my graphics card probably doesn't run the best in these settings, in these highest settings possible. But you can see here that we're actually getting, we do see a few stutters here and there, and again, that's based off my video card, but right now we see that it's running at 60 FPS at the very top of the screen. And again, so we know that it's working, right? But this particular one requires another mod in order for it to work as well as it needs to work. Okay, so it kind of looks like it's going pretty slow, right? Also, when we use this mod and we use our weapons menu or whatever, it breaks the immersion here, and this is a big issue with this particular game. Let me say it this way: the game was intended to not break the immersion like that. So obviously, I searched long and hard, and I did find this particular mod set to include the fix, and you can see that on the top right of the screen. There is a fix for this. So you can see that it's trying to get to that high FPS, but let's see if we can actually enhance this experience furthermore. And also, let's go ahead and fix this menu issue right here. Okay, so we're back here on the desktop. In order to get the most clear use of the 60 frames with this particular mod here, I'm going to go ahead and pull this one. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this one over here, as it recommends to use with the static. The controller UI, I actually have a PlayStation controller, so I'm going to go ahead and drag this in here as well. This particular PlayStation mod here actually fixes the black screen issue. Having drug over this particular UI mod should alleviate that problem with black screen. Now let's go ahead and see what we can do about graphics as well. There are some enhancements. I think some of these modifications are intended to boost performance for lower end graphics cards. So again, your mileage may vary. Do your research on the Holographic Wings website and find out what might work in your particular situation. I'm going to go ahead and attempt and try to get the highest quality that I can. So I'm going to bring in this mod here, and I'm also going to bring in this as well. I'm going to double check the mods on my game, and it does have everything. It looks like everything that I'm requesting here. So let's just go ahead and boot it back up. Okay, so we're back in game. We've got all our mods installed, and I'm actually starting to notice a big difference once I've applied that modification. I'm playing here and it doesn't really feel as jarry as it did. Now, from time to time when you play, you'll discover that there will be some shader issues here and there, but I think once the shaders have kind of introduced themselves into the game, it kind of alleviates over time. You really have a seamless experience, okay? And it is really looking nice right now. As you can tell, depending on the situation, you probably will see some dips. You go into the 40s. I think the best part about this is that, from what I've seen on my other build, is as long as it doesn't dip below 30, you're pretty much fine. The scrolling and the turning, it feels like a next generation game. It feels like it, honestly, to me, it feels like how the game should be intended to play. Let's go ahead and check on the menu issue. Ah, there we go. And that's a beautiful thing about this particular mod provided by Holographic Wings. It's honestly 60 frames, the dynamic, and the black screen fix, pretty much I feel is all you need. You don't have to go as far as to introduce all of the other elements as far as graphics are concerned. Um, you don't have to go to the highest tier of graphics. You can work with what you want to work with. But all in all, I think that we've got a pretty great experience so far. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to the person who created this mod. I'm looking at a picture of a PlayStation DualSense controller within Tears of the Kingdom itself. And again, it's really, really cool. Okay, so you can right now it says, push circle to talk, and that actually does work. If you go ahead and navigate into the menus and check out the options, it shows a picture of a DualSense controller right there. Right? So I feel like it's really super cool for this particular mod to show this. Wow, it even works with the square right there. Very, very cool to see it show all of the buttons within the game layout itself, so you're not confused, right? Very cool. So again, this to me, this area right here is a little bit more drastic, but I do believe that once we do establish the shaders, you can see again, we're not really hitting too hard on the frames again. I think that happens every time a new element is introduced as far as shaders are concerned. But man, it's really pretty beautiful, and I imagine that if you wanted to turn down the settings with the RX 580, you could get a really great experience out of this. That pretty much covers this video. I hope that you found that the procedures to install Yuzu helped you in some kind of way. I know that I was a little confused when I had to set this up. We had the ability to get to 60 frames per second. Depending on your video graphics card, you probably might be able to get better performance than I'm getting here. I'm pretty much satisfied with this experience at its highest peak. Is there room for me to kind of adjust and get the best performance? Will there be a need for me to adjust the performance down the line? Most likely if I run into some huge issues. But for now, 40s is okay for me. The VRAM usage, as you see in the top right corner, is not too bad at 5 gigabytes right now. Down the line, you may see other performance or additional VRAM pool, but I feel like we're at a good result. We're kind of on the higher end using the GPU more so than kind of pushing our CPU, and that's where I like to be. I like to live mostly in the GPU. But yeah, no, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching this video. Good luck with Zelda, and we'll see you in the next one.